The motel manager told police that room 17 had been empty for over 3 weeks. No guests, no cleaners, nobody even had a key. But every single night at exactly 2:13 a.m., the security camera outside the room captured the shadow of someone standing behind the curtains. And on the 4th night, the shadow waved at the camera. That was the same night a guest staying 2 doors down disappeared without taking any of his belongings. Police later searched room 17. Inside, they found wet footprints on the carpet, a running television, and a wall covered in dozens of photographs of motel guests sleeping inside their rooms. The strange part? Most of the photos were taken from inside the rooms, and investigators never figured out how anyone got in. Cheap roadside motels always feel strange at night. The buzzing neon signs, the flickering hallway lights, the silence that somehow never feels completely silent. Most people stay one night and leave without thinking twice about the place. But in October of 2019, one small motel outside of Nevada became the center of one of the strangest disappearances local police had ever seen. Even now, former employees refuse to talk about it publicly. Some say the story was exaggerated online. Others believe something far worse happened inside that motel. But according to police reports and interviews from the people who were there, one thing is certain: something was living inside room 17, and for weeks, nobody noticed. The Desert Palm Motel sat just off an isolated highway about 40 minutes outside Las Vegas. It wasn't the kind of place families stayed. Most customers were truck drivers, travelers passing through, or people looking for somewhere cheap to spend the night. The motel only had 22 rooms, 2 floors, 1 ice machine, a tiny office connected to the manager's apartment. The owner, Daniel Mercer, had managed the property alone for years. People described him as quiet but polite. According to former guests, the motel itself always felt slightly off. Several people later claimed they heard footsteps walking outside their rooms late at night, even when the parking lot was empty. Others complained about scratching sounds inside the walls. But old motels make noise. Nobody thought much of it until room 17 stopped being rented. 3 weeks before the disappearance, a woman staying in room 17 abruptly checked out in the middle of the night. According to Daniel, she looked terrified. He asked if something was wrong. The woman reportedly told him, "Someone keeps standing outside my bathroom while I sleep." Daniel assumed she was drunk or paranoid, but later that morning, the cleaning staff refused to enter the room. One of the cleaners claimed the bathroom mirror had the words, "Don't let him see you sleep," written across the glass. The words had apparently been smeared using condensation. Daniel cleaned the room himself. After that, he locked it. He later told police he planned to renovate the room because guests kept complaining about a bad smell coming from the vents. So for the next few weeks, room 17 stayed empty, or at least everyone believed it was empty. On October 14th, a 28-year-old salesman named Eric Holloway checked into the motel while traveling for work. Eric had spent the entire day driving across state lines. Phone records later showed he called his girlfriend around 11:40 p.m. During the call, he joked about how creepy the motel looked. But near the end of the conversation, his tone changed. Eric told her he could hear somebody walking back and forth outside his room. She told him to ignore it. Motels are noisy. But Eric reportedly said something strange. He told her, "The footsteps stop every time I look through the window." That was the last conversation anyone ever had with him. The motel had only one working security camera. It faced the second-floor hallway. At 2:13 a.m., the camera captured a dark figure standing motionless behind the curtains of room 17. The room was supposed to be empty. At first, police thought the image quality was too poor to identify anything clearly. But after enhancing the footage, investigators noticed something disturbing. The figure didn't appear naturally shaped. Its arms looked unusually long. Its head tilted at an angle that almost didn't seem human. And according to the timestamp, the figure remained completely motionless for over 18 minutes. Then suddenly, it raised one arm and waved directly toward the camera. Minutes later, Eric Holloway exited his room. The footage showed him slowly walking toward room 17. He appeared disoriented, almost hypnotized. Police say he stood outside the door for nearly 30 seconds. Then the door slowly opened. Eric stepped inside. The door closed behind him. He was never seen again. The next morning, Eric's car was still parked outside. His wallet, phone charger, luggage, and work documents remained untouched in his room. When police arrived, Daniel insisted room 17 was locked. But officers immediately noticed something strange. The door to room 17 wasn't fully shut. It was slightly open. Inside, the room looked abandoned. Dust covered the furniture. The air smelled damp. The mattress had been removed weeks earlier. But investigators found several things that made no sense. Wet footprints covered the carpet. Not shoe prints, bare footprints. The footprints led from the bathroom to the center of the room, then stopped completely. No exit prints, no return prints, just an abrupt ending in the middle of the floor. Then officers discovered the photographs, dozens of them, hidden beneath the sink. Every photo showed motel guests asleep inside their rooms. Some were taken through windows. Others appeared to be taken from inside the rooms themselves. One photograph showed Eric Holloway asleep only hours before his disappearance. Standing beside the bed, partially hidden in darkness, was a tall, blurry figure. Police never released the image publicly, but one detective later described it as the only photograph that ever genuinely made me feel sick. While searching the bathroom, officers discovered a loose ventilation panel behind the shower. Behind it was a narrow crawl space running between several motel rooms. Investigators realized someone could move through the walls unnoticed. The crawl space contained food wrappers, water bottles, blankets, and hundreds of cigarette butts. Someone had clearly been living inside the motel walls for a long time. But that wasn't the worst part. Deep inside the crawl space, investigators found a small hidden area directly above room 17. The space contained more photographs, more disturbing messages, and a notebook. Most of the pages were impossible to understand. The writing constantly switched between messy handwriting and symbols. But several lines repeated over and over. He watches through their eyes. Don't fall asleep. And finally, room 17 is not empty. Police believed a homeless man had secretly lived inside the motel walls. It explained the noises, the photographs, the movement inside the vents. But there were still problems with the theory. For starters, the crawl space was far too small for a person to comfortably move through. Several officers later admitted they struggled to even fit inside. And according to the forensic report, none of the footprints inside room 17 matched Eric. In fact, investigators were unable to match them to anyone. The footprints also appeared unusually distorted, almost stretched. Then there was the timeline. Security footage never showed anyone entering or leaving the room besides Eric. No employee, no stranger, nobody. And the camera facing the parking lot showed no vehicles leaving the motel between midnight and sunrise. Eric simply vanished. 3 days later, police reopened the crawl space for a more detailed search. This time they noticed a terrible smell coming from deeper inside the structure. Behind a rotting wooden panel, investigators discovered a tiny hidden chamber. Inside was an old television connected to several small surveillance cameras. Most of the cameras pointed directly into motel rooms. But one camera showed something far stranger. It faced room 17. The footage from earlier that night had been recorded. Detectives watched Eric enter the room. He stood motionless near the center of the floor. Then, according to the report, the bathroom door slowly opened, but nobody walked out. Instead, Eric appeared to react to something investigators could not see. He slowly backed away. Then the recording suddenly filled with static. When the image returned 3 seconds later, Eric was gone. The room was empty. Police later confirmed the video had not been edited. The Desert Palm Motel shut down less than 2 months later. Daniel Mercer disappeared shortly after the investigation and was never officially charged with anything. Some believe he knew someone was living inside the walls. Others think he was involved. The motel itself was eventually demolished. But urban explorers who visited before demolition claimed strange things still happened inside. Several reported hearing movement behind the walls. One group claimed they found fresh footprints inside room 17 despite the building being abandoned. And according to local rumors, the security camera in the hallway continued activating every night at exactly 2:13 a.m., even after the electricity had been disconnected. To this day, Eric Holloway has never been found. No body, no evidence, no confirmed suspect. Officially, the case remains unsolved. But the strangest detail was discovered much later. Months after the motel was demolished, a disposable camera was found buried beneath the rubble. Most of the photos were destroyed. Except for one, the image showed the inside of room 17. The room was dark, empty, except for a single figure standing in the corner, watching the camera. And according to investigators, the photograph was taken after the motel had already been demolished. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more real-world mysteries, disappearances, and terrifying cases that still remain unexplained. And before you leave, check your room the next time you stay in a motel.